The sound of cheap crystal shattering against concrete is something you never really forget. It is a sharp, jagged noise, but it was absolutely nothing compared to the sound of my sister's laughter right after it happened. My daughter Maeve had just turned 7 years old. She was wearing a little blue dress she picked out herself and a plastic birthday crown I bought for her at the party store. She was so happy. She just wanted to stand next to her grandmother for a family photo. Instead, my sister Cressida shoved her hard enough to send a 7-year-old child sprawling onto the patio stones. I can still see it in slow motion. The way Maeve's knees hit the ground, scraping against the rough concrete. The way the little plastic crown flew off her head, hit the floor, and snapped into 3 pieces. And then, Cressida looking down at her, smoothing her custom white silk engagement dress to make sure it was not wrinkled, and saying the words that burned a hole straight through my soul. She looked at my crying child, let out a short laugh, and said, "Trash doesn't belong in my perfect picture." The worst part was not just the shove or the horrific words. It was the absolute silence that followed. A whole backyard full of aunts, uncles, cousins, and my own mother, and nobody moved to help my little girl. They just watched. Some looked away. Some took sips of their drinks. That was the exact moment I realized the family I was born into was never really mine. I did not scream. I did not cry. I picked my daughter up, I walked out, and 12 hours later, I started tearing my sister's entire life apart piece by piece. Welcome back to Quiet Reckonings. This is the channel for the people who are always told they were the strong one. The ones who finally stopped apologizing for holding a boundary. If a story like this finds you tonight, you are not alone here. Drop a comment, tell me your story, and be sure to subscribe. In my family, there was a very clear, unspoken hierarchy. There was Cressida, who was delicate and needed things, and there was me, Sloane, the invisible workhorse. My mother Sylvia set this dynamic in stone very early on. When I was 12 years old, I walked myself to the dentist for a tooth extraction because my mother was too busy picking out a prom dress for my older cousin. I sat in that dentist chair alone, held my own hand, and walked home with bloody gauze in my mouth. A week later, Cressida, who was 7 at the time, scraped her knee on the driveway. My mother kept her out of school for 3 days, bought her ice cream every single afternoon, and told everyone in the neighborhood how incredibly brave her little angel was being. They had a phrase for me. "Sloane is just so strong. She can handle anything." For 30 years, I thought that was a compliment. I did not realize it was just their way of saying I was free labor. Being the strong one meant I was the one who absorbed the pain so they did not have to. It meant I was the one who paid my own way through college working double shifts at a diner and a bookstore, while Cressida got a brand new sports car at 18 just for graduating high school with incredibly average grades. I built a life out of that forced independence. I became a forensic accountant. For over a decade, I have made my living tracking hidden money. I hunt down corporate embezzlers, uncover massive financial fraud, and find the ugly truths that desperate people try to bury in complicated spreadsheets. I am very good at my job because numbers do not lie, and they do not play favorites. Numbers do not care who the golden child is. But the tragic irony of my life was that while I was ruthlessly auditing million-dollar corporations, I was willfully blind to the massive, glaring deficit in my own family's emotional ledger. Whenever Cressida wrecked her car, I was the one my mother called to handle the insurance claims. Whenever she maxed out a credit card on designer clothes, I was the one guilt tripped into covering the minimum payment so her credit score would not completely tank. "You make so much money, Sloane," my mother would say, her voice dripping with that familiar manipulative sweetness. "Your sister is just finding her way in the world. Family helps family." I paid the toll over and over again because I thought buying their peace meant buying their love. I thought if I was useful enough, maybe they would look at me the way they looked at her. But you cannot buy genuine affection from people who view you as an ATM. This year was supposed to be different. I promised myself I was going to draw a line in the sand. I was 34 years old, a single mother raising an incredible, perceptive little girl, and I wanted to break the toxic cycle. I did not want Maeve growing up thinking she had to earn her space in the world by being quiet, small, and useful. I just wanted her to be celebrated for exactly who she was. But how do you rewrite 30 years of deep-rooted history when the people around you violently refuse to read the new script? To fully understand what happened next, you need to understand the fantasy world my sister lived in. Cressida was 29, undeniably beautiful, and deeply, violently insecure. She and her fiancé Declan were a match made in a very shallow, artificial heaven. Declan was 30, had a very expensive taste for tailored suits, and was perpetually between massive business ventures. That is just a polite, family-friendly way of saying he had not held a steady job in 2 full years. If you looked at their social media profiles, you would think they were young royalty. There were perfectly filtered photos of weekend trips to vineyards, artisan lattes, designer bags, and exclusive dinner parties. But I knew the reality. I knew because I was the one catching the overflow of their terrible financial decisions. They were drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, floating their entire lifestyle on high-interest credit cards, and my mother's endless enabling. My mother, Sylvia, was the lead architect of this delusion. She defended Cressida's spending habits with a ferocity that completely defied logic. To Sylvia, Cressida just had refined tastes and Declan was a misunderstood visionary. If I ever dared to suggest they needed a strict budget, I was immediately branded as the jealous, bitter older sister who did not know how to enjoy life. There is one specific, crucial detail from the past that you need to know, because it is the loaded gun that my family eventually pointed right at my head. 5 years ago, my mother had a major health scare. She needed surgery, and her insurance paperwork was a total mess. In a complete panic, she asked me to co-sign a legacy joint bank account. It was an old-school banking setup where both our names and social security numbers were on the account. It was meant purely so I could easily transfer funds to cover her medical bills and manage her mortgage payments while she was in recovery. I put my name on it, funded it with my own savings, and managed it flawlessly until she was back on her feet. Once she was better, I stopped using it entirely. I told her we needed to close it immediately. But the bank required both of us to show up in person to sign the physical closure documents. Every single time I brought it up, Sylvia brushed me off with an excuse. "Oh, Sloan, I am too tired this week. Let us just leave it. It is empty anyway, and it is good to have an emergency family fund just in case something happens. We have to trust each other." I let it go. It was a zero-balance account gathering dust in the banking system. As a forensic accountant, I should have known better than to leave an open financial door in a house full of people who felt entitled to my money. But she was my mother, and despite everything they had done to me, a sick, hopeful part of me still wanted to believe she would not actively betray me. Fast forward to the present day. Cressida and Declan got engaged. The ring was massive, and the family group chat was a non-stop, exhausting parade of wedding mood boards, dress fittings, and venue links. I stayed quiet. I was busy working a heavy corporate fraud case, and I was focusing all my spare energy on Maeve. My daughter was turning 7, a huge milestone in her little world. I originally planned to take Maeve to a nice restaurant, just the two of us. But my mother insisted we celebrate at her house. "Bring her over on Saturday afternoon," she said over the phone, her tone remarkably breezy and light. "We're having all the aunts, uncles, and cousins over anyway. We will do a nice big family lunch, and it will be so good for Maeve to be surrounded by everyone who loves her on her special day." I hesitated. I knew my mother's invitations always came with heavy strings attached, but Maeve was sitting right there, listening. Her eyes lit up at the idea of a big family party with all her cousins. She spent the entire Friday night drawing a beautiful, colorful card for her grandmother. She was so excited to show it off. So, against my better judgment and my screaming intuition, I agreed. I bought a beautiful, expensive little gift for Maeve, a large set of customized art supplies she had been begging for, and wrapped it in shiny silver paper with a big blue bow. I bought a small, pretty vanilla cake with her name written in bright blue frosting. We drove the 25 minutes to my mother's house, listening to pop music on the radio, my daughter beaming in her new dress. I told myself it would be a good day. I told myself that for just one afternoon, my family could put their obsessions aside and celebrate this sweet little girl. I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong. What was waiting for us at that house was not a birthday party at all. It was a stage set for my sister's endless vanity, and my daughter was about to be treated like an unwanted prop in someone else's movie. Do you know what it feels like to walk into a trap set by your own mother? We pulled into my mother's driveway, and the first thing that hit me was a deep, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. The front porch was draped in elaborate, cascading white and gold floral arrangements. There was a vintage chalkboard sign by the front door that read in looping, professional calligraphy, Cressida and Declan, "The journey begins." There was not a single balloon. Not a single mention of a 7th birthday anywhere in sight. I unbuckled Maeve, grabbed her silver-wrapped gift and the cake box, and walked inside. The living room was packed with relatives holding crystal flutes of champagne. The dining table had been completely cleared out and replaced with a massive, tiered display of engagement photos, expensive catered appetizers, and a sprawling floral centerpiece that must have cost a fortune. My mother spotted me from across the room and hurried over. She did not look at Maeve. She did not say happy birthday. She looked directly at the bright silver gift box in my hands with a look of sheer panic. "Sloane, you made it," she whispered rapidly, grabbing my elbow and pulling me toward the kitchen hallway out of sight. "Listen, put that box in the laundry room or the trunk of your car or something. And put the cake in the garage fridge immediately." I stared at her, feeling my heart rate start to climb. "Mom, it is Maeve's birthday. Where are we supposed to put her things? She wants to open her present." Sylvia shushed me violently, looking around nervously to make sure none of the guests were watching. "Do not make a scene today, Sloane. Cressida decided to do her official engagement photoshoot today because the weather is perfect and the expensive photographer was finally available. The theme is pastel and white. That bright silver paper completely ruins the aesthetic of the room. We will do Maeve's little cake thing much later, after the photographer leaves and things quiet down. Just be easy today, okay? Do not ruin your sister's big moment." My blood ran completely cold. She had hijacked my daughter's birthday to host an engagement photoshoot for my sister, and she expected me to just fall in line like a good little soldier. I looked down at Maeve. She was clutching her handmade card for Grandma, looking around the room full of loud adults who were entirely ignoring her existence. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice dangerously low, "you invited us here for a birthday party. And she will get one." Sylvia hissed, her fake smile instantly plastered back on for an ant walking by. "Just wait your turn. Be strong, Sloane. Do not be difficult. It is just a few hours." I swallowed the anger. It tasted like ash, but I did it for Maeve, because I did not want to start a massive screaming match and scare her on her birthday. I quietly walked to the back room, hid the silver gift in a dark closet, and shoved the cake behind a carton of milk in the fridge. When I came back out, Cressida was holding court in the exact center of the room. She was wearing a custom silk dress, laughing loudly, flashing her diamond ring at the older aunts. Declan was standing next to her, looking incredibly smug and holding a drink. Cressida noticed me and gave a dismissive, tiny little wave. "Oh, hey Sloane. Glad you could make it to our special day." She did not even glance at my daughter. For the next 2 excruciating hours, Maeve and I sat in the corner of the living room. I fed her little catered sandwiches and told her funny stories to distract her. She kept asking when she could give Grandma her card. I kept saying soon, baby soon. I watched my family raise glasses to toast my sister. I watched them hand over thick white envelopes full of cash. I watched them celebrate a couple that I knew for a fact was drowning in terrible debt, while my kind, smart 7-year-old daughter sat completely ignored on a dining chair. Then, the professional photographer arrived. He was a loud, highly energetic guy who immediately started directing people toward the backyard. "All right, everyone. The lighting is perfect right now out here on the patio. Let us get a massive family portrait to commemorate the happy couple." The crowd shuffled eagerly outside. The patio was beautifully decorated with a massive floral arch. My mother was running around frantically, positioning people based on height and outfits. "Aunt Patricia, over here. Uncle Robert, stand behind Declan." I stayed near the back edge of the patio, holding Maeve's hand tightly. I intended to just stay out of the way entirely. But Maeve, with the innocent, pure heart of a child, thought family portrait meant her too. She saw her grandmother standing near the center, smiling brightly. Maeve let go of my hand. She smiled a massive, gap-toothed smile, adjusted her little blue dress, fixed her plastic birthday crown, and started trotting eagerly toward the center of the group to stand right next to Sylvia. "Grandma, I want to be in the picture too," she said happily. What happened next took maybe 3 seconds, but it is etched into my brain permanently, a scar that will never fully heal. Have you ever seen someone look at a child with pure, unfiltered disgust? For a terrifying second, the entire backyard went dead silent. The only sound was the photographer nervously clearing his throat and lowering his camera. Maeve sat on the hard stones, looking down at her scraped knee. Her lower lip was trembling violently as the shock set in. She looked up at her aunt, her big brown eyes welling with thick tears, waiting for an apology, waiting for someone to reach down and help her up. Cressida did not apologize. She did not even flinch or look guilty. She looked down at the broken pieces of the plastic crown scattered on the concrete, smoothed the front of her expensive silk dress, and let out a short, harsh, mocking laugh. "Trash doesn't belong in my perfect picture," Cressida said, her voice loud and clear enough for every single person on the patio to hear. "Someone get her out of the frame right now, she is ruining the lighting." I waited for the reaction. I waited for my mother to gasp in horror, for an aunt to step forward and scold her, for Declan to tell his fiancée she had gone way too far. I waited for the village that is supposed to protect a child to step up and do the right thing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Uncle Robert looked down at his expensive leather shoes. Aunt Patricia took a long sip of her champagne and looked up at the sky. My mother, Sylvia, the woman who raised me, stepped forward and actually sighed in deep annoyance. "Sloane, please," Sylvia muttered, waving her hand at me dismissively without even looking at her crying granddaughter. "Take her inside right now. Cressida's dress is going to wrinkle if we have to reset the pose. Just go." The silence from my family was a physical blow to the chest. It was the final, undeniable confirmation of everything I had suspected for 30 long years. To them, we were not people. We were not family. We were just inconveniences blocking their perfect lighting. I did not scream. I did not throw a glass of champagne through a window. In my line of work, you learn very quickly that losing your temper means losing your power entirely. When you find the smoking gun in a massive financial audit, you do not yell at the suspect. You quietly pack your briefcase, build the bulletproof case, and let the authorities drop the hammer. I walked over to my daughter. I knelt on the cold stone and gently lifted her into my arms. I wiped a stray tear from her cheek with my thumb and kissed her forehead. I stood up, holding her tightly against my chest. I looked directly at Cressida. Her smug, victorious smile faltered just a tiny fraction when she finally met my eyes, because there was no hurt or sadness in my expression anymore. Only a cold, absolute, terrifying deadness. I looked at my mother, who actively refused to meet my gaze. I did not say a single word. I turned my back on the floral arch, the expensive champagne, and the people who shared my DNA. I walked through the side gate, straight down the driveway, and buckled Maeve into her car seat. I went back into the house just long enough to grab her silver-wrapped gift from the dark closet and the cake from behind the milk in the fridge, walking right past a cousin who tried to awkwardly offer me a paper napkin. I got into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away. That was the last time I ever acted like the good, compliant daughter. The strong one was officially dead. The forensic accountant was driving the car now, and the forensic accountant does not forgive. She investigates. What would you do if your family treated your child like garbage? The drive from my mother's house to our apartment takes exactly 25 minutes. For the first 15 minutes, the interior of the car was incredibly heavy with silence. I kept my eyes focused firmly on the road ahead, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned completely white, trying to process the sheer cruelty of what had just happened on that patio. Then, from the back seat, a small, fragile, broken voice broke the silence. "Mom?" I looked in the rearview mirror. Maeve was clutching the torn strap of her blue dress, her eyes red and puffy from crying silently. "Yes, baby. I am right here." Am I trash? She asked. Her voice cracked on the last word, and a fresh tear rolled down her cheek. Is that why Grandma did not want my picture? It felt like someone had shoved a jagged knife between my ribs and twisted it. The generational trauma, the decades of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family, had just been passed down directly to my innocent 7-year-old child. I pulled the car over to the shoulder of the road immediately. I put it in park, unbuckled my seatbelt, and climbed into the back seat to sit right next to her. I took her little hands in mine and looked directly into her beautiful brown eyes. Listen to me, Maeve. You are the most valuable, precious, beautiful person in my entire world. What your aunt said, and what those people did back there, that is because they are broken inside. They are empty, and they try to make other people feel small so they can feel big. You are not trash. You are a treasure. And I promise you, on my life, I will never let anyone treat you like that ever again. She sniffled and buried her face in my shoulder. We sat there on the side of the road until her breathing steadied and she stopped crying. I drove us to a fancy, brightly lit bakery downtown. We threw out the plain vanilla cake I had bought earlier. I told Maeve she could pick out the biggest, most ridiculous cake in the entire display case. She chose a massive, triple-layer chocolate fudge cake covered in bright rainbow sprinkles. When we got home, we put on her favorite animated movie, opened her silver gift full of art supplies, and ate massive slices of chocolate cake sitting right on the living room floor. I made absolutely sure she went to sleep that night knowing she was deeply, fiercely loved and protected. Once she was fast asleep, the adrenaline finally faded, leaving behind a cold, hard, dangerous clarity. I sat at my kitchen island in the dark, staring blankly at the wall, thinking about boundaries and consequences. I was done. I was going to block their phone numbers tomorrow morning and walk away forever. That was the plan. Just disappear from their lives completely. But at exactly 11:45 that night, my phone buzzed violently on the kitchen counter. It was not a text from my mother. It was not a fake apology from Cressida. It was an automated security alert from a premium credit monitoring app one use for my professional accounting work. The bright notification lit up the dark kitchen, casting a harsh glow across the countertops. Alert: a hard inquiry has been posted to your credit profile. Source: Elysian Gardens Event Management. I stared at the screen, my eyes narrowing. The exhaustion vanished instantly, replaced by a surge of pure, focused energy. Elysian Gardens is the most exclusive, ridiculously expensive wedding venue in our entire state. It is a sprawling, historic estate with imported crystal chandeliers, manicured gardens, and a waiting list that is at least a year long. It is exactly the kind of pretentious place Cressida would kill to get married at. But why on earth would a luxury wedding venue be running a hard credit check on my personal social security number at midnight? A normal person might think it was a system glitch, or maybe just a weird coincidence. But I am an auditor. I track financial anomalies for a living. I know exactly what a hard inquiry means. A hard inquiry means someone just applied for a massive line of credit or authorized a massive payment plan using my personal identity. The cold deadness inside me shifted into something sharp, calculated, and incredibly dangerous. My direct family had pushed my daughter into the dirt for a photo. Now it looked like they were digging their greedy hands into my financial identity. Will intuition and a laptop be enough to uncover a massive family secret? When you investigate severe financial fraud, you start with the widest net possible. You look for the threads that do not belong in the fabric, the numbers that disrupt the pattern. I logged into my highly secure work terminal from my laptop and pulled my full credit report from all 3 major bureaus. I cross-referenced it meticulously with my active bank accounts. Everything looked perfectly normal at first glance. My main checking account was fine. My personal credit cards had their usual, manageable balances. Then, like a ghost stepping out of the fog, I remembered the joint account. The legacy joint account my mother begged me to keep open 5 years ago. The one I had ignored completely because the balance was zero, and it was too much of a bureaucratic hassle to drag my mother into a physical branch to sign the closure papers. I navigated swiftly to the bank's online portal, entered my credentials, and pulled up the transaction history for that specific joint account. The screen loaded. The numbers stared back at me in stark black and white. I felt the air completely leave my lungs. 3 weeks ago, an incoming transfer of $12,000 had hit the account. It came from a third-party lending service, essentially a quick approval, high-interest personal loan company. That was bad enough. But it was the transaction that happened exactly 2 days later that made my blood run freezing cold. Outgoing wire transfer, $12,000. Merchant, Elysian Gardens Event MGT. Reference, Cressida Wedding Deposit. $12,000. Charged directly to an account with my name listed as the primary account holder. I sat back in my chair, the silence of my apartment suddenly deafening. They did not just borrow money. They took out a high-interest loan under the umbrella of my joint account to pay for a deposit on a luxury wedding venue. Because it was a legacy joint account, my mother had legal access to initiate transfers. But she did not have the income to qualify for a $12,000 loan on her own. They used the account history, heavily tied to my excellent credit score, to get the approval and then immediately wired the money out before I would notice. But a luxury venue like Elysian Gardens does not just take a random wire transfer without a signed, legally binding contract on file. They require a financially responsible party. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I opened my personal email account. Not my secure work email, but the old personal one I rarely check anymore because it is full of marketing spam. I went to the search bar and typed Elysian Gardens. The search returned exactly 2 results. Both were hidden deep in my spam folder. I clicked the first email, dated 3 weeks ago. It was an automated message from the venue's secure document signing service. Subject: Welcome to Elysian Gardens. Your event contract is complete. I opened the attached PDF document. It was a massive, 50-page venue rental agreement outlining catering costs, floral arrangements, and security deposits. The total cost of the wedding was estimated at an absurd $45,000. The required non-refundable deposit was exactly $12,000. I scrolled rapidly to the very last page, down to the signature block. Under the line boldly labeled Financially Responsible Party/Guarantor was my full legal name, Sloan Harper. And right next to it, stamped with a digital IP address and a timestamp, was a digital signature. It was an electronic squiggle that vaguely resembled my actual handwriting, applied using my social security number as verification. I had never seen this document in my life. I had never spoken to anyone at Elysian Gardens. I had never agreed to host, plan, or pay for a single napkin at this wedding. My sister and my mother had forged my signature on a legally binding contract to secure a luxury wedding venue, using an old banking loophole to wire the deposit without triggering my daily alerts. They had treated my identity like a communal family asset. They thought I was so busy, so detached, and so thoroughly trained by 30 years of emotional abuse to just absorb the hit that, even if I eventually found out, I would just sigh, write a check, and pay it to keep the peace. They thought the strong one would just take it. I stared at the forged signature glowing on the screen. The image of Cressida shoving Maeve flashed violently in my mind. Trash doesn't belong in my perfect picture. They wanted a perfect picture. They wanted a $45,000 luxury wedding funded by outright fraud and stolen identity. I reached for my phone on the counter. I did not call my mother. I did not call my sister to scream at her and demand answers. I opened my contacts list and found the emergency 24-hour fraud hotline for my bank. They thought I was a pushover. They forgot I was a hunter. And the hunt had just officially begun. If you are enjoying the story so far and you are ready to see this family get exactly what they deserve, drop a comment below saying, "I'm Win." This is our secret code for the real ones who made it this far. I will be hearting and replying to every single comment with "I'm Win." Now, let us get back to the reckoning. When you find one cockroach in a dark kitchen, you know there is an entire nest hiding in the walls. I did not stop my investigation with the Elysian Gardens contract. That was just the surface level of the fraud. I poured another cup of black coffee, sat back down at my kitchen island, and threw my widest forensic net over my entire financial existence. I was looking for any anomaly, any slight discrepancy in my credit history over the past 6 months. It did not take long to find the next bleeding wound. Deep in the secondary pages of my credit report, underneath my actual, legitimate credit cards, was a brand new revolving credit line. It was opened less than 4 weeks ago. It was a premium retail store card, the kind that carries an astronomical interest rate if you do not pay the balance in full every 30 days. The account was maxed out completely. The balance sitting in red numbers on my screen was $8,000. My heart hammered against my ribs. $8,000. I traced the merchant ID code. It led directly to a high-end, luxury jewelry boutique located in the most expensive shopping district in the city. I accessed the detailed statement through a backdoor verification process I use for auditing. There was only one purchase listed on the entire statement. It was a men's luxury Rolex watch. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Cressida had not just stolen my identity to secure her dream wedding venue. She had actively opened a fraudulent credit card in my name to buy an $8,000 Rolex as an engagement present for Declan. She wanted to present him with a massive, flashy token of her love, and she wanted me to foot the bill without my knowledge. My sister was building an entire empire of illusions, and she was using my stolen financial foundation to hold it up. The sheer entitlement was breathtaking. It was a masterclass in narcissistic family drama. But as a forensic accountant, I know that discovering the theft is only half the job. You have to prove exactly how they executed it. I needed the digital fingerprints. I submitted a rapid fraud verification request to the retail bank that issued the credit card. Because it was my social security number, I had the legal right to request the metadata attached to the original online application. I wanted to see the digital footprints left behind when the thief hit the submit button. An hour later, the automated report hit my secure inbox. I opened the file and scrolled down to the IP address logged at the exact moment the application was approved. I ran a standard geolocation trace on that specific IP address. The result appeared on the screen, and the last shred of hope I had for my family shattered into a million pieces. The IP address did not belong to Cressida's apartment. It did not belong to Declan's phone. The IP address was registered to the internet service provider account at my mother's house. It was the exact same Wi-Fi network my mother used to send her daily morning text messages. My mother was not just turning a blind eye. She was not just aggressively defending my sister's bad habits. My mother had actively sat at her desktop computer, typed in my social security number, my date of birth, and my mother's maiden name, and helped her favorite daughter steal $8,000 from me. She was a direct accomplice in federal wire fraud and identity theft. I closed my laptop very slowly. The betrayal was so deep, so profound, it physically ached in my bones. My mother had looked me in the eye today at that party. She had ordered me to hide my daughter's birthday gift. She had watched my daughter get shoved onto the concrete. And she did all of that knowing she had recently helped steal $20,000 in total credit from my name. They truly believed I was a bottomless resource, a machine that existed only to fund their perfect, toxic family narrative. They thought they could humiliate my child and steal my future on the exact same day. I looked over at the living room. Maeve was fast asleep on the couch, surrounded by her new art supplies, a little smudge of chocolate frosting still on her cheek. My mother chose her golden child. Now, I was choosing mine. And I was about to unleash a financial firestorm they would never recover from. How do you burn down a toxic family without lighting a single match? Monday morning arrived. I did not drop Maeve off at school. I called her in sick, made her a massive stack of pancakes, and set her up with her new art supplies at the kitchen table. I needed her where I could see her. I needed to know she was safe while I went to war. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, I picked up my phone and dialed the priority fraud division of my primary bank. I did not sound angry. I did not sound like a victim. I sounded exactly like a forensic accountant reporting a confirmed, documented crime. My name is Sloane Harper, I told the agent calmly. I am reporting a confirmed case of aggravated identity theft and wire fraud. A $12,000 loan was fraudulently initiated through a legacy joint account, and an $8,000 retail credit account was opened using my social security number without my consent. I have the IP logs and the forged digital signatures. The agent's tone instantly shifted from polite customer service to serious compliance mode. Understood, Ms. Harper. We take this extremely seriously. What are your immediate directives? I want a complete freeze on the joint account. I want a hard fraud alert placed on my social security number across all 3 bureaus. And I am officially initiating a clawback protocol on the $12,000 wire transfer to Elysian Gardens, as well as disputing the retail charge for the watch as fraudulent. Initiating the clawback now, the agent confirmed, the sound of rapid typing echoing through the phone. The funds transferred to Elysian Gardens will be legally frozen and pulled back to the bank pending the fraud investigation. The retail card will be locked and flagged for criminal review. This process is irreversible once started. Do it, I said, my voice as cold as ice. The trap was officially set. The money they thought they had secured was currently evaporating into thin air. But I needed to make absolutely sure the venue knew exactly why the money was disappearing. I did not want my family spinning a lie about a banking error. I wanted the truth on record. I looked up the number for Elysian Gardens and asked to speak directly to the senior event manager. A woman named Talia answered the phone. She had a crisp, no-nonsense voice, the kind of voice that manages million-dollar events and does not tolerate nonsense. This is Talia. How can I help you? My name is Sloane Harper, I said. I believe you have a wedding contract on file for Cressida and Declan. You received a $12,000 wire deposit for it 3 weeks ago. Yes, the spring floral wedding, Talia said, her tone softening a bit. Is there an issue with the catering selections, Ms. Harper? There is an issue with the contract, I replied evenly. I never signed it. My sister forged my signature and used stolen funds to pay your deposit. My bank's fraud department has just initiated a legal clawback. That $12,000 is going to be pulled from your accounts by the end of the business day. I highly advise you to secure your financial position regarding that event. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. I could practically hear Talia processing the liability. Ms. Harper, that is a very serious accusation, Talia finally said, her voice dropping an octave. We require rigorous identification for our guarantor contracts. Check the digital signature log, I countered immediately. The IP address will not match my location. Check the billing address. It goes to my mother's house, not mine. I heard clicking on her end. A sharp intake of breath. Then, Talia hesitated. Ms. Harper, there is a private client note attached to your guarantor profile in our system. It was added by the bride, Cressida, during the initial booking phase. I am not supposed to read this out loud, but given the circumstances. Read it, I demanded. Talia cleared her throat. The note says, please be advised, my older sister Sloane is the financial guarantor, but she suffers from severe paranoid schizophrenia and frequent delusions. If she calls attempting to cancel the venue or claiming she did not sign the contract, please ignore her completely. It is just one of her episodes. We are managing her care. The sheer, breathtaking evil of it knocked the wind out of me. Cressida had not just stolen my identity. She had actively tried to strip away my credibility, weaponizing a fake severe mental illness to preemptively silence me if I ever discovered the fraud. She had built a firewall of lies to protect her stolen perfect picture. I am a licensed forensic accountant, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so pure it felt like electricity. I do not have schizophrenia. I have a family of criminals. I am sending you the official bank fraud claim number right now. Cancel the contract, Talia. Consider it done, Talia said, her voice completely devoid of any remaining warmth for the bride. We do not do business with frauds. I hung up the phone. The pieces were moving. The avalanche had started. And my family had absolutely no idea it was coming right for them. How long does it take for a stolen empire to completely collapse? The absolute chaos started exactly 24 hours later. By Tuesday morning, the bank's legal clawback had successfully hit the venue's accounts. The $12,000 was ripped back into the ether. Elysian Gardens, operating under Talia's strict orders, immediately froze the wedding booking and sent an automated cancellation warning to Cressida's email. My phone started ringing at exactly 7:30 in the morning. The caller ID flashed my mother's name. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. By 8 o'clock, I had 14 missed calls and a barrage of frantic text messages. The flying monkeys had been officially deployed. A flying monkey, in the context of a toxic family, is a relative who acts on behalf of the narcissist to pressure, manipulate, or guilt-trip the victim into compliance. My phone was exploding with them. My Aunt Patricia texted, "Sloan, what on earth is going on? Your mother is having a panic attack. The wedding venue is glitching and saying the deposit bounced. Call your bank right now and fix this. Do not be difficult." My Uncle Robert texted, "Your sister is crying hysterically. You need to step up and handle this banking error. Family relies on you. Stop ignoring your mother." They thought it was a simple banking glitch. They thought the strong one had just forgotten to verify a transfer. They had no idea I had intentionally detonated the bomb. Then came a text from Sylvia, my mother. It was not a request. It was a command laced with pure, desperate manipulation. "Sloan, this is not funny. The venue is threatening to give Cressida's date to someone else. I know you are mad about that stupid little photo thing on Saturday, but you cannot ruin your sister's entire life over a petty grudge. Be the bigger person. Fix the account right now. Talia from the venue is demanding an in-person meeting to clear this up." Family meeting. My house. Saturday afternoon. "Talia is coming. You will be there, you will sign a new check, and you will apologize for the delay. Do not embarrass us." I stared at the text message. She was trying to trap me. She thought that by bringing the venue manager into her living room and surrounding me with the judgmental stares of all the aunts and uncles, I would crumble under the social pressure. She thought I would be too embarrassed to expose the family secrets in front of a stranger, so I would just silently write a new check to cover the glitch and save face. It was a brilliant, manipulative strategy. It would have worked perfectly on the old Sloan. But the old Sloan was dead. I replied with a single word, "Fine." But I had 4 days until that Saturday meeting, and I am not a person who walks into a trap blindly. I needed to know why they were this desperate. Why take out a high-interest loan? What happened to Declan's money? Declan had constantly bragged about his wealthy parents and his massive savings. I used the routing numbers from the fake contract to do a little deep dive into the public financial records linked to Declan's name. Forensic accounting is 90% knowing exactly where to look for the hidden breadcrumbs. It took me 3 hours, but I found the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. I found a wire transfer receipt tied to a public property tax record. Declan's parents, an older, respectable couple who lived 2 states away, had generously gifted the couple $15,000 exactly 2 months ago. The memo line on the transfer literally read, "For the wedding venue. Love, Mom and Dad." They had the money. They had $15,000 in cash. So where did it go? I cross-referenced Cressida's public Instagram posts with international flight data. Exactly 6 weeks ago, Cressida and Declan took a 2-week, ultra-luxury vacation to Bali. They stayed in a 5-star private villa, rented a yacht, and posted endless photos about their pre-wedding honeymoon phase. The truth hit me like a freight train. They did not lose the venue money. They deliberately blew $15,000 of Declan's parents' money on a luxury vacation to Bali just to look rich on the internet. And when the bill for the actual wedding venue came due, they panicked. They could not ask Declan's parents for more money without exposing the lie. They could not afford it themselves. So, they looked at me. The quiet, reliable, invisible sister. The strong one. They decided to steal $12,000 from my identity to cover up their massive, irresponsible lie. I printed out the flight records. I printed the wire transfer receipt from Declan's parents. I printed the forged contract, the IP logs showing my mother's involvement, and the $8,000 Rolex statement. I compiled every single piece of evidence into 5 separate, identical brown manila envelopes. Saturday was coming. My mother wanted a family meeting to force me into submission. She wanted an audience. I was going to give her the greatest show of her entire life. Are you ready to see a toxic empire fall? I arrived at my mother's house at exactly 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I did not bring Maeve. She was safely at home having a movie marathon with a trusted babysitter. I walked up the driveway holding nothing but my car keys and 5 identical brown manila envelopes tucked under my arm. I opened the front door and walked into the living room. The atmosphere was incredibly oppressive. It felt like walking into a courtroom where the jury had already been heavily bribed. Every single flying monkey was there. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Robert, and 3 older cousins were sitting on the couches, their arms crossed, looking at me with expressions of deep disappointment and judgment. Cressida was sitting in a velvet armchair, dabbing her perfectly dry eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the traumatized victim flawlessly. Declan stood behind her, looking nervous, but maintaining his fake posture of authority. My mother, Sylvia, stood in the center of the room. And sitting on the small love seat, looking incredibly uncomfortable and deeply professional, was Talia, the manager from Elysian Gardens. She had a leather binder on her lap. Sylvia saw me and immediately went into her performance. Sloane, finally. Sylvia sighed loudly, shaking her head as if dealing with a rebellious teenager. Come in. Sit down. We are all here to support you through whatever emotional breakdown you are currently having, but this petty behavior has to stop. You have caused Cressida so much unnecessary stress. I did not sit down. I stood in the dead center of the room, my posture straight, my face completely blank. Aunt Patricia chimed in right on cue. Really, Sloane? Canceling the venue deposit just because you were a little jealous of Cressida's photo shoot? That is incredibly immature. You make plenty of money. Stop trying to ruin your sister's special day. Cressida let out a dramatic, fake sob. I just do not understand why she hates me so much, she whimpered, looking up at Talia to make sure the manager was registering her pain. I just wanted a beautiful wedding. Declan stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. You need to fix this right now, Sloane. Talia was gracious enough to drive all the way out here to accept a new certified check. You are going to write that check, apologize to my fiancé, and we are going to put this embarrassing banking glitch behind us. The trap was fully sprung. The pressure was immense. 30 years of social conditioning screamed at me to just apologize, write the check, and make the uncomfortable tension in the room disappear. That is how toxic families win. They weaponize your natural desire for peace. I looked at Talia. She was watching me intently, her eyes darting between me and Cressida. She knew about the schizophrenia note. She was waiting to see which version of me was real. I took a slow, deep breath. I did not raise my voice. I did not yell. I spoke with the calm, measured authority of a forensic accountant presenting a fatal audit to a board of directors. There is no banking glitch, I said, my voice cutting through the thick tension in the room like a razor blade. And I am not writing a check for a single dime. My mother stepped forward, her face flushing red with sudden anger. Sloane Harper, you will stop this nonsense right now. You are humiliating this family in front of a guest. You are the strong one, you are supposed to fix things. I am fixing things, I replied coldly. I am permanently fixing this family's delusion that my identity is a communal bank account. I walked over to the large glass coffee table in the middle of the room. I took the 5 manila envelopes from under my arm. I handed one to Talia. I handed one to my mother. I tossed one onto the couch for Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert to share. I threw one at Declan's chest, forcing him to catch it. I kept the last one for myself. What is this? Sylvia demanded, staring at the envelope like it was covered in poison. That, I said, looking directly at Cressida, whose fake tears had suddenly stopped completely, is the autopsy report of your perfect picture. Open them. The room went completely silent. The only sound was the tearing of heavy paper as 5 people opened their envelopes simultaneously. How fast can a lie unravel when the receipts are printed in high definition? I watched their faces as they pulled the thick stack of documents out of the envelopes. I had highlighted the most damaging parts in bright yellow marker so they could not miss them. Talia was the first to understand. She flipped straight to the forged contract, saw the IP logs, and her jaw tightened. My mother stared at the retail credit card statement for the $8,000 Rolex. She read the geolocation data printed clearly at the bottom. Page 1 announced to the silent room. A forged contract for a $12,000 loan, signed using my stolen social security number. Page 2, a fraudulent retail credit card opened in my name for an $8,000 watch, currently sitting on Declan's wrist. Page 3, the IP metadata proving that the fraudulent application was submitted using the Wi-Fi network inside this exact house. Mom, you literally sat at your computer and helped your daughter commit federal identity theft. Aunt Patricia gasped loudly, dropping her copy of the documents onto the table. Uncle Robert turned completely pale, backing away from my mother as if she were contagious. It was a misunderstanding. Sylvia stammered, her hands shaking violently as she dropped the papers. Cressida said you agreed to pay for it. She said you told her to use your information because you were too busy. That is a lie, I fired back instantly. And even if it were true, you do not forge a signature on a legally binding financial document. You committed a felony, Mom. Cressida was hyperventilating now. The golden child mask was completely gone, replaced by the terrified face of a criminal who had just been cornered. Turn to page 4, I commanded, keeping my voice utterly ruthless. They turned the page. It was a screenshot of the private client note Cressida had sent to the venue. For 30 years, you all told me I was the strong one, I said, looking at the aunts and uncles who were now staring at Cressida in absolute horror. But when my sister needed to steal my money, she submitted a note to the venue claiming I was suffering from severe paranoid schizophrenia and frequent delusions, just so no one would believe me when I reported the fraud. The room erupted. Aunt Patricia started yelling at Sylvia. Uncle Robert looked disgusted. Talia stood up. Her leather binder snapped shut. This is a criminal matter, Talia stated loudly, silencing the room. Elysian Gardens is officially canceling the event. You are blacklisted from our properties. I highly advise you to retain legal counsel. She looked at me, gave a short, respectful nod, and walked out the front door. Declan was pacing the room rapidly, pulling at his expensive collar. The reality of federal wire fraud was sinking into his brain. He realized he was wearing a stolen $8,000 watch, and he was an accessory to a massive crime. Cowards always turn on each other when the ship starts sinking. Declan suddenly stopped pacing, pointed a trembling finger right at Cressida's face, and screamed, I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know. She told me her rich sister was paying for everything. She said the watch was a gift. She is a liar and a thief. I had nothing to do with this. Cressida shrieked, launching herself off the chair. You coward. You knew exactly what we were doing. You begged me for that stupid watch. They were screaming at each other, tearing their relationship apart in the middle of the living room. It was pathetic. But I was not finished. Page 5, I said over the yelling. They all looked down at the final document. It was the wire transfer receipt showing the $15,000 from Declan's parents, placed right next to the flight records for their luxury vacation to Bali. Declan's parents gave you the money for the venue 2 months ago, I said clearly. You blew all of it on a fake honeymoon in Bali for Instagram. And when you ran out of money, you decided to steal from me. Just as I finished the sentence, the front doorbell rang. It was a sharp, piercing sound. My mother, completely disoriented and crying, went to the door and pulled it open. Standing on the front porch, looking absolutely furious, were Declan's parents. I had mailed them a copy of the manila envelope via overnight shipping on Thursday, and I had included an anonymous note inviting them to this exact family meeting. I told them if they wanted to know where their $15,000 really went, they needed to be here at 2:30. They had been standing on the porch for the last 10 minutes. The front window was open. They had heard every single word of Declan throwing Cressida under the bus. Declan's father marched into the living room. He did not look at Cressida. He marched straight up to his son, grabbed him by the expensive lapels of his shirt, and shoved him hard against the wall. You stole our retirement money for a vacation, his father roared, his face purple with rage. You lied to us? And you let this girl steal her sister's identity. Dad, please listen to me, Declan begged, actually crying now. The wedding is over, his mother said from the doorway, her voice shaking with disgust. The engagement is over. You are going to pack your things and you are going to pay us back every single dime, or I will call the police myself. The uninvited guests had delivered the final blow. The perfect picture was officially burned to the ground. The living room was a scene of absolute devastation. Declan was practically dragged out the front door by his furious parents, leaving his keys on the table. The engagement was dead. The wedding was canceled. Cressida was completely alone. She collapsed onto the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. The $8,000 Rolex sat discarded on the coffee table. She was looking at a massive mountain of high-interest debt, a canceled venue, and the very real threat of a federal fraud investigation. There was no Declan to save her. There was no Instagram filter that could fix this. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert quietly gathered their coats and slipped out the back door without saying a single word. They did not want to be anywhere near the blast radius of this toxicity. They had finally seen the golden child for exactly what she was. My mother, Sylvia, looked around the empty, ruined room. Her entire world, her entire narrative of the perfect, successful family, had just been vaporized in less than 20 minutes. She looked at me standing calmly by the table. She took a step forward, raising her hands, trying to summon that old, manipulative motherly warmth. Tears were streaming down her face. "Sloan, please," Sylvia whispered, her voice cracking. "Please. We can fix this. You proved your point. We are so sorry. Please, just call the bank and drop the fraud charges. If you do not, your sister is going to go to jail. I could go to jail. Please, you're the strong one. You have to save us." She reached out and tried to grab my arm, tried to pull me into a hug. I took a sharp step backward. I did not let her touch me. "You are right about one thing, Mom," I said, my voice completely devoid of any emotion. "I am the strong one. But for 30 years, you manipulated me into believing that being strong meant carrying your burdens. It meant paying your debts. It meant taking the hit so you and Cressida could pretend to be perfect." I looked down at Cressida, who was weeping loudly on the rug. "You pushed my 7-year-old daughter onto the concrete," I said to her. "You called her trash because she stepped into your fake, fraudulent spotlight. You tried to ruin my credit, my identity, and my sanity." I looked back at my mother. "Anyone who treats my daughter like garbage has no place in my perfect picture," I said clearly. "I am not dropping the fraud charges. I am not closing the investigation. The bank has all the evidence. Whatever happens next is between you, Cressida, and the federal government. Do not ever contact me or my daughter again." I turned around and walked out the front door. I did not slam it. I did not run. I walked down the driveway with my head held high, the afternoon sun warming my face. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away from that house for the very last time. The weight that lifted off my chest as I merged onto the highway was indescribable. 30 years of heavy, suffocating expectations just vanished. I was no longer the family ATM. I was no longer the invisible workhorse. I was just Sloan, Maeve's mother, and I had protected my child like a lioness. When I got back to my apartment, Maeve was sitting on the floor, intensely focused on a beautiful, colorful drawing. She looked up at me and smiled that huge, gap-toothed smile. "Hi, Mom," she said brightly. "Did you fix the problem?" I walked over, sat down on the floor next to her, and pulled her into a tight, fierce hug. "I did, baby," I whispered into her hair. "The problem is gone forever." The aftermath played out exactly as the numbers dictated. The bank permanently closed the accounts and flagged Cressida and Sylvia for fraud. They are currently buried under thousands of dollars in legal fees, trying to fight off the credit bureaus. Declan moved back in with his parents in another state. The family group chat is dead. I changed my phone number, moved to a better school district, and put all that extra energy and money directly into Maeve's future. I want to say something to everyone listening to this right now. If you're the designated strong one in your family, if you're the one they only call when they need money, a favor, or someone to blame, hear me clearly. Your strength is not a tool for them to exploit. Your strength belongs to you. You are allowed to set a boundary. You are allowed to stop paying the toll. And you are absolutely allowed to let them face the terrifying consequences of their own actions. Walking away does not make you weak. It makes you free. Now, I want to ask all of you a question. Just this morning, I received a certified letter from my mother's defense attorney. They are officially begging me to sign an affidavit stating that the credit card usage was a familial misunderstanding so they can avoid severe criminal prosecution. They are terrified. Should I sign the paper and let them off the hook with a warning, or should I throw the letter in the trash and let the justice system teach them a final, devastating lesson? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video, subscribe to Quiet Reckonings for more stories, and remember to protect your peace at all costs. I will see you in the next one.